invasive species. I still am. It's what I was doing in the States. And so when I came to Australia, I just figured I'd keep doing invasive species that are impacting where I was. I was working just with the rabbits and playing with the design and trying to get kind of a Victorian wallpaper to kind of feel with all the little edges and stuff. And when in my sketchbook, when I was designing it, I found a combination. There was this little gap in it. I'm like, well, it kind of looks like a toad if I do this. And then I'm like, oh, I'll just combine the two. And I was just playing the composition, and the circles are part of it because there was a weird space in the rabbits and the legs between the leaping and the squatting toads. As you can see, if you look at it a certain way, it looks like the toad squats and it leaps and it squats and it leaps. And there's an animation to it, which I really like. Street art is definitely, it was kind of how I started to get into this. I had really mixed feelings about street art. Like I feel really excited by some of it and really disappointed about other parts. It seems to lack a site-specific mentality. Largely I've found it's about how long your mark stays up, and how prominent it was. And that really didn't interest me as much as the sense of belonging that went with it and the things you could say with street art. And stencils and stuff like that. And so I decided, I'd explore that because what I find most worth exploring is exactly that, which you have mixed feelings about. Sometimes you love it, sometimes you hate it, but if it's producing complexity in yourself, it's worth figuring out what that is. And layered, and so it's both that it's an invasive species, but it's also a form of belonging. So I'm looking kind of at the balance ultimately. And finding a balance, because we're all in a way invasive species, especially when we have a real strong impact on the landscape. And I think that the reason I use clay is it washes away, it reintegrates with the environment, becomes part of it again, because we're here, but there's not a balance. But ultimately there will be, for better or for worse, there will be a balance. Sure. I hope they like it. I hope they find it amusing. Like. I find my work stronger when I'm enjoying making it, and usually there's some amusing component to it that makes it stronger in my mind. I like the impact. It's on the window. It's like everyone can see as they go by. It's unlike anything else on the walk, so it's eye-catching. It doesn't have a lot of the washing away, which is part of most of my practice. I do these on exterior walls, where it's open to the elements, and the idea is, as I said, it washes into the environment again. But I feel like if they like it and they're engaging with it, perhaps it might communicate, just an awareness issue, or this is a major problem. It really is. Well, as I said, I think there'll be a balance reestablished. Not necessarily a good balance. There's only so much we can do. I was talking with Peter Banks, who's a scientist up at Bees, which is biological sciences here at University of South Wales, and he's talking about there's mentalities of like, at some point you just can't do anything about it because there's so many cane toads or rabbits, and what do? Well, you learn to live with it, and at some point, Paul Davis, one of my lecturers down at COFA, was telling a story how the jaws and snakes up in the cane toad territories have shrunk because it's the snakes that can't eat the cane toad that are living and evolving, and so it's shifting. It's becoming incorporated in the environment. It's a pretty nasty animal. It doesn't have a lot of the good things that other animals have, and it doesn't fit in the food chain. But at some point it will. It's like it will. The ecosystem will evolve and adapt. But I don't know if it's where we as humans want to live. And so that's the question, I guess, that comes to mind is, how do we want to live? What do we want our environment to be? Look what we do to it. Even in our attempts for a positive, biologically sound solution like cane toads, well, we won't use pesticides, has its problems. So I guess it's just being more sensitive, more aware of, where we are and how things are interrelated and interconnected, and how close we are to place and where we belong. I'm hopeful for the future. But it's never going to be easy. It's always going to be hard. But we live as best as we can, and I think as trying to be a full human being and relate to where you are and the people around you is really important.